How's it going, guys? This is Ideas of Ice and Fire, and welcome to my Song of Ice and Fire podcast. If you want to support this channel, check out Patreon and also follow me on social media like Facebook and Twitter. All the links are on the screen and in the description. The topic of today's podcast will be Melisandre, the Red Woman, and I will be reading the chapter from A Dance with Dragons, and I also will be discussing my thoughts on the chapter. So without further ado, here is Melisandre. It was never truly dark in Melisandre's chambers. 3 tallow candles burned upon her window sill to keep the terrors of the night at bay. 4 more flickered beside her bed, 2 to either side. In the hearth a fire was kept burning day and night. The first lesson those who would serve her had to learn was that the fire must never, ever be allowed to go out. The Red Priestess closed her eyes and said a prayer, then opened them once more to face the hearth fire. One more time. She had to be certain. Many a priest and priestess before her had been brought down by false visions, by seeing what they wished to see instead of what the Lord of Light had sent. Stannis was marching south to peril, the king who carried the fate of the world upon his shoulders. Azor Ahai reborn. Surely R'hllor would vouchsafe her a glimpse of what awaited him. "Show me Stannis, Lord," she prayed. "Show me your king, your instrument." Visions danced before her, gold and scarlet, flickering, forming and melting, and dissolving into one another. Shapes strange and terrifying and seductive. She saw the eyeless faces again, staring out at her from sockets weeping blood. Then the towers by the sea, crumbling as the dark tide came sweeping over them, rising from the depths. Shadows in the shape of skulls, skulls that turned to mist. Bodies locked together in lust, writhing and rolling and clawing. Through curtains of fire, great winged shadows wheeled against a hard blue sky. The girl. I must find the girl again. The gray girl on the dying horse. Jon Snow would expect that of her, and soon. It would not be enough to say the girl was fleeing. He would want more. He would want the when and where. And she did not have that for him. She had seen the girl only once. A girl as gray as ash. And even as I watched, she crumbled and blew away. A face took shape within the hearth. Stannis, she thought, just for a moment. But no, these were not his features. A wooden face, corpse white. Was this the enemy? 1,000 red eyes floated in the rising flames. He sees me. Beside him a boy with a wolf's face threw back his head and howled. The Red Priestess shuddered. Blood trickled down her thigh, black and smoking. The fire was inside her, and agony and ecstasy filling her, searing her, transforming her. Shimmers of heat traced patterns on her skin, insistent as a lover's hand. Strange voices called out to her from days long past. "Melanie," she heard a woman cry. A man's voice called, "Lot 7?" She was weeping, and her tears were flame, and still she drank it in. Snowflakes swirled from a dark sky, and ashes rose to meet them, the gray and white whirling around each other as flaming arrows arched above a wooden wall, and dead things shambled silent through the cold, beneath a great gray cliff where fires burned inside 100 caves. Then the wind rose, and the white mist came sweeping in, impossibly cold, and one by one the fires went out. Afterward only the skulls remained. Death, thought Melisandre. The skulls are death. The flames cracked softly, and in their crackling she heard the whispered name, Jon Snow. His face floated before her, limed in tongues of red and orange, appearing and disappearing again, a shadow half seen behind a fluttering curtain. Now he was a man, now a wolf, now a man again. But the skulls were here as well. The skulls were all around him. Melisandre had seen this danger before, had tried to warn the boy of it. Enemies all around him, daggers in the dark. He would not listen. Unbelievers never listened until it was too late. "What do you see, my lady?" the boy asked softly. "Skulls, 1,000 skulls, and the bastard boy again, Jon Snow." Whenever she was asked what she saw within her fires, Melisandre would answer, "Much and more." But seeing was never as simple as those words suggested. It was an art, and like all arts, it demanded mastery, discipline, study, pain. That too. R'hllor spoke to his chosen few through blessed fire, in a language of ash and cinder and twisting flame, that only a god could truly grasp. Melisandre had practiced her art for years beyond count, and she had paid the price. There was no one, even in her order, who had her skill at seeing the secrets half revealed and half concealed within the sacred flames. Yet now, she could not even seem to find her king. "I pray for a glimpse of Azor Ahai, and R'hllor shows me only snow." "Devon," she called, "a drink." Her throat was raw and parched. "Yes, my lady." The boy poured her a cup of water from the stone jug by the window and brought it to her. "Thank you." Melisandre took a sip, swallowed, and gave the boy a smile. That made him blush. The boy was half in love with her, she knew. He fears me, he wants me, and he worships me. All the same, Devon was not pleased to be here. The lad had taken great pride in serving as a king's squire, and it had wounded him when Stannis commanded him to remain at Castle Black. Like any boy at his age, his head was full of dreams of glory. No doubt, he had been picturing the prowess he would display at Deepwood Motte. Other boys his age had gone south to serve as squires to the king's knights and to ride into battle at their side. Devon's exclusion must have seemed a rebuke, a punishment for some failure on his part, or perhaps some failure of his father. In truth, he was here because Melisandre had asked for him. The 4 eldest sons of Davos Seaworth had perished in the battle on the Blackwater, when the king's fleet had been consumed by the green fire. Devon was the 5th born, and safer here with her than at the king's side. Lord Davos would not thank her for it, nor more than the boy himself, but it seemed to her that Seaworth had suffered enough grief. Misguided as he was, his loyalty to Stannis could not be doubted. She had seen it in her flames. Devon was quick, and smart, and able too, which was more than could be said about most of her attendants. Stannis had left a dozen of his men behind to serve her when he marched south, but most of them were useless. His grace had need of every sword, so all he could spare were gray beards and cripples. One man had been blinded by a blow to his head in the battle by the wall. Another lamed when his falling horse crushed his legs. Her sergeant had lost an arm to a giant's club. 3 of her guard were geldings that Stannis had castrated for raping wildling women. She had 2 drunkards and a craven too. The last should have been hanged, as the king himself admitted, but he came from a noble family, and his father and brothers had been stalwart from the first. Having guards about her would no doubt help keep the Black brothers properly respectful, the Red Priestess knew. But none of the men Stannis had given her were like to be much help should she find herself in peril. It made no matter. Melisandre of Asshai did not fear for herself. R'hllor would protect her. She took another sip of water, laid her cup aside, blinked and stretched, and rose from her chair, her muscles sore and stiff. After gazing into the flames so long, it took her a few moments to adjust to the dimness. Her eyes were dry and tired, but if she rubbed them, it would only make them worse. Her fire had burned low, she saw. "Devon, more wood." "What hour is it?" "Almost dawn, my lady." "Dawn. Another day is given us, R'hllor be praised." The terrors of the night recede. Melisandre had spent the night in her chair by the fire, as she often did. With Stannis gone, her bed saw little use. She had no time for sleep, with the weight of the world upon her shoulders, and she feared to dream. Sleep is a little death. Dreams are the whisperings of the other, who would drag us all into his eternal night. She would sooner sit bathed in the ruddy glow of her Red Lord's blessed flames, her cheeks flushed by the wash of heat, as if by a lover's kisses. Some nights she drowsed, but never for more than an hour. One day Melisandre prayed she would not sleep at all. One day she would be free of dreams. Melanie, she thought. Lot 7. Devon fed fresh logs into the fire, until the flames leapt up again, fierce and furious, driving the shadows back into the corners of the room, devouring all her unwanted dreams. The dark recedes again, for a little while. But beyond the wall, the enemy grows stronger, and should he win, the dawn will never come again. She wondered if it had been his face that she had seen, staring out at her from the flames. No, surely not. His visage would be more frightening than that, cold and black, and too terrible for any man to gaze upon and live. The wooden man she had glimpsed, though, and the boy with the wolf's face, they were his servants, surely his champions, as Stannis was hers. Melisandre went to her window, pushed open the shutters. Outside, the east had just begun to lighten, and the stars of morning still hung in a pitch-black sky. Castle Black was already beginning to stir as men in black cloaks made their way across the yard to break their fast with bowls of porridge before they relieved their brothers atop the wall. A few snowflakes drifted by the open window, floating on the wind. "Does my lady wish to break her fast?" asked Devon. "Food. Yes, I should eat." Some days she forgot. R'hllor provided her with all the nourishment her body needed, but that was something best concealed from mortal men. It was Jon Snow she needed, not fried bread and bacon. But it was no use sending Devon to the Lord Commander. He would not come to her summons. Snow still chose to dwell behind the armory, in a pair of modest rooms previously occupied by the Watch's late blacksmith. Perhaps he did not think himself worthy of the king's tower, or perhaps he did not care. That was his mistake, the false humility of youth that is itself a sort of pride. It was never wise for a ruler to eschew the trappings of power, for power itself flows in no small measure from such trappings. The boy was not entirely naive, however. He knew better than to come to Melisandre's chambers like a supplicant, insisting she come to him instead. She would have need of words with him, and oft as not, when she did come, he would keep her waiting or refuse to see her. That much, at least, was shrewd. "I will have nettle tea, a boiled egg, and bread with butter. Fresh bread, if you please, not fried. You may find the wildling as well. Tell him that I must speak with him." "Rattleshirt, my lady." "And quickly." And the boy was gone. Melisandre washed herself and changed her robes. Her sleeves were full of hidden pockets, and she checked them carefully, as she did every morning, to make certain all her powders were in place. powders to turn fire green, or blue, or silver, powders to make flame roar and hiss and leap up higher than a man is tall, powders to make smoke, a smoke for truth, a smoke for lust, a smoke for fear, and the thick black smoke that could kill a man outright. The red priestess armed herself with a pinch of each of them. The carved chest that she had brought across the narrow sea was more than 3/4 empty now, and while Melisandre had the knowledge to make more powders, she lacked many rare ingredients. My spells should suffice. She was stronger at the wall, stronger even than in a shy. Her every word and gesture was more potent, and she could do things that she had never done before. Such shadows as I bring forth here will be terrible, and no creature of the dark will stand before them. With such sorceries at her command, she should soon have no more need of the feeble tricks of alchemists and pyromancers. She shut the chest, turned the lock, and hid the key inside her skirts in another secret pocket. Then came a rapping at the door. Her one-armed sergeant, from the tremulous sound of his knock. "Lady Melisandre, the Lord O'Bones is come." "Send him in." Melisandre settled herself back into the chair beside the hearth. The wildling wore a sleeveless jerkin of boiled leather, dotted with bronze studs beneath a worn cloak molted in shades of green and brown. No bones. He was cloaked in shadows too, in wisps of ragged gray mist, half seen, sliding across his face and form with every step he took. Ugly things, as ugly as his bones. A widow's peak, close-set dark eyes, pinched cheeks, a mustache wriggling like a worm above a mouthful of broken teeth. Melisandre felt the warmth in the hollow of her throat as her ruby stirred at the closeness of its slave. "You have put aside your suit of bones," she observed. "The clacking was like to drive me mad." "The bones protect you," she reminded him. "The Black Brothers do not love you. Devon tells me that only yesterday you had words with some of them over supper." "A few. I was eating bean and bacon soup whilst Bowen Marsh was going on about the high ground. The old pomegranate thought that I was spying on him and announced that he would not suffer murderers listening to their counsels. I told him that if that was true, maybe they shouldn't have them by the fire." Bowen turned red and made some choking sounds, but that was as far as it went. The wildling sat on the edge of the window, slid his dagger from his sheath. "If some crow wants to slip a knife between my ribs whilst I'm spooning some supper, he's welcome to try. Hobbs gruel would taste better with a drop of blood to spice it." Melisandre paid the naked steel no mind. If the wildling meant to harm her, she would have seen it in her flames. Danger to her own person was the first thing she had learned to see back when she was still half a child, a slave girl bound for life to the great red temple. It was still the first thing she looked for whenever she gazed into a fire. It was their eyes that should concern you, not their knives, she warned him. The glamour, aye. In the black iron fetter about his wrist, the ruby seemed to pulse. He tapped it with the edge of his blade. The steel made a faint click against the stone. "I feel it when I sleep, warm against my skin, even through the iron, soft as a woman's kiss. Your kiss. But sometimes in my dreams, it starts to burn, and your lips turn to teeth. Every day I think how easy it would be to pry it out, and every day I don't. Must I wear the bloody bones as well? The spell is made of shadow and suggestion. Men see what they expect to see. The bones are part of that. Was I wrong to spare this one? If the glamours fail, they will kill you." The wildling began to scrape the dirt out from beneath his nails with the point of his dagger. "I've sung my songs, fought my battles, drunk summer wine, tasted the Dornishman's wife. a man should die the way he's lived. For me, that's steel in hand. Does he dream of death? Could the enemy have touched him? Death is his domain, the dead his soldiers. You shall have work for your steel soon enough. The enemy is moving, the true enemy, and Lord Snow's rangers will return before the day is done, with their blind and bloody eyes. The wildling's own eyes narrowed. Gray eyes, brown eyes. Melisandre could see the color change with each pulse of the ruby. Cutting out the eyes, that's the Reaper's work. The best crow's a blind crow, he likes to say. Sometimes I think he'd like to cut out his own eyes, the way they're always watering and itching. Snow's been assuming that the freak folk would turn to Tormund to lead them, because that's what he would do. He liked Tormund, and the old fraud liked him too. If it's the Weeper, though, that's not good. Not for him and not for us. Melisandre nodded solemnly, as if she had taken his words to heart. But this Weeper did not matter. None of his free folk mattered. They were a lost people, a doomed people, destined to vanish from the earth, as the children of the forest had vanished. Those were not words he would wish to hear, though, and she could not risk losing him. Not now. How well do you know the north? He slipped his blade away. As well as any raider. Some ports more than others. There's a lot of north. Why? The girl, she said. A girl in gray on a dying horse. Jon Snow's sister. Who else could it be? She was racing to him for protection. That much Melisandre had seen clearly. I have seen her in my flames, but only once. We must win the Lord Commander's trust. And the only way to do that is to save her. Me save her, you mean? The old Lord O'Bones, he laughed. No one ever trusted Rattleshirt but fools. Snow's not that. If his sister needs saving, he'll send his crows. I would. He is not you. He made his vows and means to live by them. The Night's Watch takes no part. But you are not the Night's Watch. You can do what he cannot. If your stiff-necked Lord Commander will allow it, do your fires show where to find this girl? I saw water, deep and blue, and still with a thin coat of ice just forming on it. It seemed to go on and on forever. The long lake. What else did you see around this girl? Hills, fields, trees, a deer once, stones. She is staying well away from villages. When she can, she rides along the bed of the little streams to throw hunters off her trail. He frowned. That will make it difficult. She was coming north, you said. Was the lake to her east or to the west? Melisandre closed her eyes, remembering. West. She is not coming up the King's Road, then. Clever girl. There are fewer watchers on the other side, and more cover. And some hidey holes. I've used them myself from time to... He broke off at the sound of a war horn and rose swiftly to his feet. All over Castle Black, Melisandre knew, the same sudden hush had fallen, and every man and boy turned toward the wall, listening, waiting. One long blast of the horn meant rangers returning, but two. The day had come. The Red Priestess thought, Lord Snow will have to listen to me now. After the long mournful cry of the horn had faded away, the silence seemed to stretch out for an hour. The wildling finally broke the spell. Only one then. Rangers. Dead rangers. Melisandre rose to her feet as well. Go. Put on your bones and wait. I will return. I should go with you. Do not be foolish. Once they find what they will find, the sight of any wildling will inflame them. Stay here until their blood has had time to cool. Devon was coming up the steps of the king's tower as Melisandre made her descent, flanked by two of the guards Stannis had left her. The boy was carrying her half-forgotten breakfast on a tray. I waited for Hob to pull the fresh loaves from the oven, my lady. The bread is still hot. Leave it in my chambers. The wildling will eat it. like as not, Lord Snow has need of me beyond the wall. He does not know it yet, but soon. Outside, a light snow had begun to fall. A crowd of crows had gathered around the gate by the time Melisandre and her escort arrived, but they made way for the Red Priestess. The Lord Commander had preceded her through the ice, accompanied by Bowen Marsh and 20 spearmen. Snow had also sent a dozen archers to the top of the wall, should any foes be hidden in the nearby woods. The guards on the gate were not Queen's men, but they passed her all the same. It was cold and dark beneath the ice, in the narrow tunnel that crooked and slithered through the wall. Morgan went before her with a torch, and Merrill came behind her with an axe. Both men were hopeless drunkards, but they were sober at this hour of the morning. Queensmen, at least in name. Both had a healthy fear of her, and Merrill could be formidable when he was not drunk. She would have no need of them today, but Melisandre made it a point to keep a pair of guards about her everywhere she went. It sent a certain message. The trappings of power. By the time the three of them emerged north of the wall, the snow was falling steadily. A ragged blanket covered the torn and tortured earth that stretched from the wall to the edge of the haunted forest. Jon Snow and his black brothers were gathered around 3 spears, some 20 yards away. The spears were 8 feet long and made of ash. The one on the left had a slight crook, but the other 2 were smooth and straight. At the top of each was impaled a severed head. Their beards were full of ice, and the falling snow had given them white hoods. Where their eyes had been, only empty sockets remained, black and bloody holes that stared down in silent accusation. Who were they? Melisandre asked the crows. Black Jack Bruler, Harry Hull, and Garth Greyfeather, Bowen Marsh said solemnly. The ground is half frozen. It must have taken the wildlings half the night to drive the spears so deep. They could still be close, watching us. The Lord Steward squinted at the lines of the trees. Could be 100 of them out there, said the black brother with the dour face. Could be 1,000. No, said Jon Snow. They left their gifts in the black of night, then ran. His huge white direwolf prowled around the shafts, sniffling, then lifted his leg and pissed on the spear that held the head of Black Jack Bueller. Ghost would have their scent if they were still out there. I hope the Weeper burned the bodies, said the dour man. The one called Dolores Ed. Elsewise, they might come looking for their heads. Jon Snow grasped the spear that bore Garth Greyfeather's head and wrenched it violently from the ground. Pull down the other 2, he commanded, and 4 of the crows hurried to obey. Bowen Marsh's cheeks were red with cold. We should never have sent out rangers. This is not the time and place to pick at that wound. Not here, my lord. Not now. To the men struggling with the spears, Snow said, take the heads and burn them. Leave nothing but bare bone. Only then did he seem to notice Melisandre. My lady, walk with me if you would. At last. If it please the Lord Commander. As they walked beneath the wall, she slipped her arm through his. Morgan and Merrill went before them. Ghosts came prowling at their heels. The priestess did not speak, but she slowed at her pace, deliberately, and where she walked, the ice began to drip. He would not fail to notice that. Beneath the iron grating of the murder hole, Snow broke the silence, as she had known he would. What of the other 6? I have not seen them, Melisandre said. Will you look? Of course, my lord. We've had a raven from Sir Denys Mallister at the Shadow Tower, Jon Snow told her. His men have seen fires in the mountains on the far side of the George. Wildlings massing, Sir Denys believes. He thinks they are going to try and force the Bridge of Skulls again. Some may. Could the skulls in her visions have signified this bridge? Somehow Melisandre did not think so. If it comes, that attack will be no more than a diversion. I saw towers by the sea, submerged beneath a black and bloody tide. That is where the heaviest blow will fall. Eastwatch? Was it? Melisandre had seen Eastwatch by the sea with King Stannis. That is where his grace left Queen Selyse and their daughter Shireen when he assembled his knights for the march to Castle Black. The towers in her fire had been different, but that was off the way with visions. Yes, Eastwatch, my lord. When? She spread her hands. On the morrow, in a moon's turn, in a year, and maybe that if you act, you may avert what I have seen entirely. Else what would be the point of visions? Good, said Jon Snow. The crowd of crows beyond the gate had swollen to a score by the time they emerged from beneath the wall. The men pressed close about them. Melisandre knew a few by name. The cook, Three-Finger Hob, Mully, his greasy orange hair, the dim-witted boy called Owen the Oaf, the drunkard, Septon Calidar. Is it true, my lord? Said Three-Finger Hob. Who is it? Asked Owen the Oaf. Not Duin, is it? Nor Garth, said the queen's man, she knew as Alf of Runnymud, one of the first to exchange his 7 false gods for the truth of R'hllor. Garth's too clever for them wildlings. How many? Mully asked. 3, Jon Snow told them. Black Jack, Harry Hall, and Garth. Alf of Runnymud let out a howl loud enough to wake the sleepers in the Shadow Tower. Put him to bed and get some mulled wine into him, Jon Snow told Three-Finger Hob. Lord Snow, Melisandre said quietly, will you come with me to the king's tower? I have more to share with you. He looked at her face for a long moment, with those cold gray eyes of his right hand closed, opened, closed again. As you wish. Ed, take Ghost back to my chambers. Melisandre took that as a sign, and dismissed her own guard as well. They crossed the yard together, just the two of them. The snow fell around them. She walked as close to Jon Snow as she dared, close enough to feel the mistrust pouring off him like a black fog. He does not love me, will never love me, but he will make use of me, well and good. Melisandre had danced the same dance with Stannis Baratheon back in the beginning. In truth, the young Lord Commander and her king had more in common than either one would ever be willing to admit. Stannis had been a younger son, living in the shadow of his elder brother, just as Jon Snow, bastard-born, had always been eclipsed by his true-born sibling, the fallen hero men had called the Young Wolf. Both men were unbelievers by nature, mistrustful, suspicious. The only gods they truly worshipped were honor and duty. You have not asked about your sister, Melisandre said, as they climbed the spiral steps of the king's tower. I told you, I have no sister. We put aside our kin when we say our words. I cannot help Arya, much as I... He broke off as they stepped inside her chambers. The wildling was within, seated at her board, spreading butter on a ragged chunk of warm brown bread with his dagger. He had donned the bone armor she was pleased to see. The broken giant skull that was his helm rested on the window seat behind him. Jon Snow tensed. You? Lord Snow? The wildling grinned at them through a mouth of brown and broken teeth. The ruby on his wrist glimmered in the morning light like a dim red star. What are you doing here? Breaking my fast. You're welcome to share. I'll not break bread with you. Your loss. The loaf's still warm. Hob can do that much at least. The wildling ripped off a bite. I could visit you as easily, my lord. Those guards at your door are a bad jape. A man who has climbed the wall 100 times can climb in a window easy, though. But what good would come of killing you? The crows would only choose someone worse. He chewed, swallowed. I heard about your rangers. You should have sent me with them. So you could betray them to the Weeper? Are we talking about betrayals? What was the name of that wildling wife of yours? Snow? Ygritte, wasn't it? The wildling turned to Melisandre. I will need horses, 6 good ones, and this is nothing I can do alone. Some of the spearwise pinned up at Molestown should serve. Women would be best for this. The girls more like to trust them, and they will help me carry off a certain ploy I have in mind." "What's he talking about?" Lord Snow asked her. "Your sister." Melisandre put her hand on his arm. "You cannot help her, but he can." Snow wrenched his arm away. "I think not. You do not know this creature. Rattleshirt could wash his hands 100 times a day, and he would still have blood beneath his nails. He'd be more like to rape and murder Arya than save her. No, if this was what you have seen in your flames, my lady, you have ashes in your eyes. If he tries to leave Castle Black without my leave, I'll take his head off myself. He leaves me no choice. So be it. Devon, leave us," she said, and the squire slipped away and closed the door behind him. Melisandre touched the ruby at her neck and spoke a word. The sound echoed queerly from the corners of the room and twisted like a worm inside their ears. The wildling heard one word, the crow another. Neither was the word that left her lips. The ruby from the wildling's wrist darkened, and the wisps of light and shadows around him writhed and faded. The bones remained, the rattling ribs, the claws and teeth along his arms and shoulders, the great yellowed collarbone across his shoulders. The broken giant skull remained a broken giant skull, yellowed and cracked, grinning its stained and savage grin. But the widow's peak dissolved, the brown mustache, the knobby chin, the sallow yellowed flesh and small dark eyes all melted. Gray fingers crept through long brown hair. Laugh lines appeared at the corners of his mouth. All at once he was bigger than before, broader in the chest and shoulders, long-legged and lean, his face clean-shaven, wind-burnt. Jon Snow's gray eyes grew wider. "Mance? Lord Snow." Mance Rayder did not smile. "She burned you." "She burned the Lord of Bones." Jon Snow turned to Melisandre. "What sorcery is this? Call it what you will. Glamour, seeming, illusion. R'hllor is the Lord of Light, Jon Snow, and it is given to us, his servants, to weave with it, as others weave with thread." Mance Rayder chuckled. "I had my doubts as well, Snow. But why not let her try? It was that, or let Stannis roast me." "The bones help," said Melisandre. "The bones remember. The strongest glamours are built of such things. A dead man's boots, a hank of hair, a bag of finger bones. With whispered words and prayer, a man's shadow can be drawn forth from such and draped about another like a cloak. The wearer's essence does not change, only his seeming. She's made it sound a simple thing and easy. They need never know how difficult it had been, or how much it had cost her." That was a lesson Melisandre had learned long before Asshai. The more effortless the sorcery appeared, the more men fear the sorcery. When the flames had licked at Rattleshirt, the ruby at her throat had grown so hot that she had feared her own flesh might start to smoke and blacken. Thankfully, Lord Snow had delivered her from that agony with his arrows. While Stannis had seethed at the defiance, she had shuddered with relief. "Our false king has a prickly manner," Melisandre told Jon Snow. "But he will not betray you. We hold his son, remember, and he owes you his very life." "Me?" Jon Snow sounded startled. "Who else, my lord? Only his life's blood could pay for his crimes. Your laws said, and Stannis Baratheon is not a man to go against the law. But as you said so sagely, the laws of men end at the wall. I told you that the Lord of Light would hear your prayers. You wanted a way to save your little sister, and still hold fast to the honor that means so much to you, to the vows that you swore before your wooden god. She pointed with a pale finger. There he stands, Lord Snow. Arya's deliverance, a gift from the Lord of Light, and me. And that was Melisandre, A Dance with Dragons. Now, Melisandre is obviously a character that's all about illusion. Her very appearance is an illusion. She keeps those guards following her around to keep up the illusion, even though they wouldn't be really useful against the Night's Watch. But it's about maintaining the illusion of effortlessness. She wants them to believe that it's easy for her to perform this glamour, that it's no big deal, when in reality this has cost her a tremendous effort. Now, Melisandre, in that way, and has always really reminded me of the Bene Gesserit women from Frank Herbert's Dune series, because outwardly she has this very mystical air about her, but internally there's a lot more going on beneath the surface, and she's doing very subtle things to manipulate the way that people see her and interpret what she's saying. Like at the end of this chapter, she says a word, and both of them hear two completely different things. Now, Melisandre does refer to herself within this chapter as Melisandre of Asshai, so we can assume that she is from Asshai. That's where she originated, and then she was sold off to the Red Temple. Now, I don't imagine that shadow binding is part of the normal training of the priestess and priest of R'hllor. I think that shadow binding is just simply something else that she picked up in Asshai that just took her that step further and made her that much more powerful, because it's really a different kind of magic. It's separate from the fire magic of R'hllor. Maybe Melisandre believes that she has herself specifically uncovered something that ties the two or links the two together, but as far as we know, Shadowbinders are just a type of sorcerers that are prominent in Asshai, and the Red Priesthood is something entirely different. They worship a fire deity. What I think is interesting about Melisandre is that when she's saying that the fire is inside her, it's not just a metaphor. She is speaking literally, because there's that scene in this chapter where she's walking through the wall, and as she's walking, the wall is melting, and she says that, I hope Jon Snow notices this, because she wants to make him feel like, oh yeah, you're dealing with something that's a step beyond a normal human, even though she's really not. See, there's a lot going on. There's a lot that she's doing to kind of maintain this air of mysticism, and that's very important. The fear is very important to maintaining her power, and the mystery is very important to maintaining her power. This chapter, the reason I wanted to read the whole thing, even though it was a little long, is that it does a lot to expose who Melisandre really is and what she actually believes is going on. Melisandre is deeply afraid of something called the Great Other, which apparently exists beyond the wall. She says the enemy grows stronger beyond the wall, and she's calling this the Great Other. And she believes that something called R'hllor is speaking to her through flames. And she obviously has power. The ruby, or at least the ruby has power, because look at what we've seen. The ruby is obviously maintaining her glamour. It's transforming her. And then we have the ruby that's also maintaining Mance Rayder's glamour. So it seems, if anything, the ruby has power. And then she says that most of the other stuff is powders. And she does mention spells. She does mention spells, but she also refers to the ruby binding Mance Rayder as a spell. So to what extent is the spell the result of her own inherent power, and to what extent is it really just her collection of rubies and artifacts or whatever that's giving her this power? And see, the whole point is she doesn't want anyone to know how it works. That's why she's hesitant to show even Jon Snow at the end, because she doesn't want you to understand exactly how it works, because at the end of the day, if you understand it, then it's that much less scary. But if it remains mysterious, then it's more horrifying. It's more terrifying. And to go back to Dune, like the Bene Gesserit, they keep up the same air of mystery. So when people are around them, they say, "Oh, these are witches," and people are afraid of them. They know just how formidable they are. And another thing is to be underestimated. It gives you power, definitely. In the very first chapter that Melisandre is in, Maester Crescent is trying to poison her. And the fact that he thinks that she can be poisoned, the fact that he underestimates her in that way leads to his own death, and she is totally fine. So it gets him out of the way for her, simply because he underestimated her and he thought that he could take her out. Melisandre. Okay, so apparently Melisandre was a slave girl by the name of Melanie, and she gets sold off as a little girl. She's a member of Lot 7, and we can assume that this is a group of slaves, Lot 7, and she ends up sold off to the priesthood. So she's studying to be a red priest. But like I said before, shadow binding is not part of the teachings of the priesthood. Now, another person that we know that can shadow bind that actually shows up in the story was Mirri Maz Duur. Mirri Maz Duur learned this in a Shai, which is where Melisandre was born. And the World of Ice and Fire also makes mentions of shadow binders in a Shai that wear a wooden mask. And there's also Quaithe, who is apparently a shadow binder as well. Now, these people come from a Shai. We don't know if they come from a Shai. We know that they are prevalent in a Shai. So we can only assume that Melisandre picked up these skills in a Shai as well. And in this very chapter, she also says that she has studied for years beyond count, which has always, to me, been a line that stood out. Because if you look at the way Melisandre has described her appearance, that does not equal years beyond count. So that right there is a huge hint that Melisandre is using a glamour, that she is not exactly as she appears. Anno Naimos is saying no one is born in a Shai. Well, or so the stories say. I mean, the World of Ice and Fire is written by maesters at the Citadel, and we're only hearing stories. I mean, we don't know if they're truths or half truths from all the way across the world. So, if they are saying that no children are in a Shai, how accurate is that really? How accurate can we take that? Perhaps there are children in a Shai. Perhaps they just keep them inside. Perhaps the children aren't allowed to leave, because the fact that we don't know very much about a Shai is what makes it mysterious, right? And we have to consider the fact that the people that wrote the World of Ice and Fire were unreliable narrators to a certain extent, because they don't know everything about the world. They don't know everything about the world, is what I mean. So I think we should, yeah, of course, consider what's in the World of Ice and Fire, consider what it says and what we know about these places, but then also we have to take into account how much of this is just hearsay and myth and legend. Because stuff in this world can get as easily, through oral tradition, stuff just gets changed. Just look at the death of Joffrey Baratheon, when based off of when Joffrey Baratheon is killed, when Sansa leaves when she escapes the capital, people are saying that, oh, she disappeared in a puff of smoke and she became a wolf. She killed the king and she turned into a wolf and ran away. People are actually saying this. People think this happened. So that's just an example of how easily things can get manipulated. Shit can get twisted. And, what's actually going on is kind of maybe less strange, in fact. Because you would have to think, how does a Shai maintain its population if they aren't producing children? But we don't know, and we probably never will know fully. But back to Melisandre. Yeah, so it seems here that Melisandre is much older than she appears, right? The question then becomes, how old is Melisandre? Melisandre, we did get the reveal in the show. We didn't get her exact age, but we got to see her quote unquote true appearance. She was quite old, unnaturally old. Definitely not. Definitely she shouldn't still be alive based on what she looked like in the show. And if I remember correctly, David and Dan did say that she was hundreds of years old and that this was something that George R. R. Martin told them. So if Melisandre is hundreds of years old, I wouldn't shy away from the idea that she could even be from the time of Old Valyria or somewhere around that time. That she could have even been maybe a child at perhaps that time, and then she grew up, gained this magic, learned this art, and it's just been extending her life ever since. Now, see, the thing is, Melisandre, based on this chapter, she seems to view herself as kind of a step beyond what the other Red priests are doing. She knows for a fact that the Lord of Light will protect her. She seems very sure of herself, which to me would indicate that she's gotten some kind of assurance. I tend to feel like Melisandre, like I tend to think, why exactly does she think that Stannis is Azor Ahai? In my opinion, I think that Melisandre was told by someone else that Stannis was Azor Ahai. She got this information from somewhere else. Maybe something that's pretending to be R'hllor, her god, tells her that Stannis is the one. It's a lie, but he's telling her this. And of course she's going to believe it. That's why she's so sure of this. Because you have to wonder, why does she think this? Like, it's literally, the fire right now is literally showing her Jon Snow, and she's like, Stannis, Stannis, Stannis. So I think she had to, beforehand, have gotten some kind of assurance from somewhere that indicated that Stannis was Azor Ahai. Which he clearly isn't. Yeah, Melisandre is interesting, though. Like I was saying before, it's not just metaphorically that she's on fire. She's literally fire. She's melting the wall as she's walking by it. Like in one chapter, Jon Snow can feel the heat radiating off of her, and she says, I'm never cold. The fire is maintaining her. She doesn't have to eat. She barely sleeps. And one thing that she did say also is that dreams are bad. Dreams are the work of the Great Other, which is interesting. So it kind of would explain why she mistook Bloodraven for the Great Other if she believes that dreams are the work of the Great Other, because Bloodraven is very well known for sending dreams to people. So she sees Bloodraven, she sees Bran, and she immediately thinks, these are servants of the Dark One, the Great Other, the opposite of R'hllor. Now, if we take a little bit, let's take a little look at the religion of R'hllor for a second. It's a dualistic religion. You have R'hllor, who's the good guy, according to Melisandre and according to her religion. He's the god of fire, of light, and life. And then you've got the Great Other, whose real name is not to be mentioned. He is the god of darkness, death, cold. And, you know, an idea of a cold, dark god fits in perfectly with what the gods that the wildlings worship way out in the frozen shore, and it fits in perfectly with the others, darkness, cold, death. That all fits. And so I see why Melisandre is convinced that the Great Other is behind the White Walkers. That fits. But what also kind of is strange is the fact that she doesn't... It's the fact that she thinks that Bloodraven and Bran are servants of the Great Other. Now, I've speculated in the past that the Children of the Forest were up to no good at the Children of the Forest, and I speculated on the connections between the Children of the Forest and the White Walkers many, many times. So right there, that shows you that Melisandre, she sees this image, she sees the pale wooden face, and her instinct is telling her that this is the bad guy, this is the enemy. So that, if anything, should throw a little wrench in the idea that the Children of the Forest are there to help, even now, even seemingly. Because, you know, the idea now that's being spent is that the Children of the Forest, they helped mankind fought up, well, we got to separate the show from the book. The idea in the book is that the Children of the Forest help mankind fight off the others, and now they're preparing mankind for the return of the others, and preparing Bran to fight the White Walkers. But the only thing is, we have absolutely no reason to trust the Children of the Forest. No reason whatsoever. The Children of the Forest have been completely lying this entire time. They fought mankind for thousands of years. They have no reason to want to help mankind or to even help Bran for that instant. It doesn't make sense that Bloodraven, who is a mortal, a human, is sitting the Green Seer throne. It doesn't make sense that they want Bran. And it's also very convenient that Bran, who is the most powerful Green Seer that the world has ever seen, is suddenly there with the children of the forest and doing their bidding. And they're not even telling him everything. They won't even tell him what the real purpose is or why he's really there. And so that for me has led to a lot of suspicion about the children of the forest. So I've done several videos about them. The possession, the abomination, and there's also my video on why we can't trust the children of the forest. There's my video, the transformation. There's also my video on the origin of the White Walkers, where I speculated even before season 6 that the children of the forest created the White Walkers. Like I built that theory from looking at old archives and reading things that George R. Martin said and the way he was describing the children of the forest and the White Walkers, comparing the White Walkers to frozen Sidhe, which are beings out of Irish mythology. And if you look into it even a little bit, the story of the Sidhe from Irish mythology, real world mythology, is exactly the story of the children of the forest and their plight against the First Men and the Andals. So, yeah, I think that the fact that Melisandre sees them and says, oh yeah, these are the bad guys, it gives me brownie points. It kind of says, yeah, maybe I'm on to something. That she's seeing inside of this cave and thinking, this is darkness. So Melisandre clearly, and that's another thing, Melisandre's misunderstood. Melisandre has the greater good in mind. I think she legitimately wants to do good. That's definitely what she wants. She wants to stop this darkness that she believes is going to consume the entire world and kill everyone. She foresees what I think is Hardhome, which is the caves and all the lights going out, even though she doesn't necessarily know for sure. She thinks that it's Eastwatch, and she could very well be seeing Eastwatch. She sees a great winged beast take wing through a curtain of flame, and if we pay attention to the most recent season, something happens at Eastwatch with a great winged beast, and he does got flame, even though it's blue. So I'm just saying, so that could have totally been what Melisandre was seeing in the fire, but we don't know how accurate that was, book to show, so we can't even say that right now. But yeah, she's obviously doing what she's doing to protect the greater good, and obviously sacrifices work. And see, that's the thing. Sacrifices have shown to work. Blood is potent in this series. So Melisandre saying that we have to sacrifice this person, we have to do this. Well, you have to wonder, what would you do in this situation? What is one child like Edric Storm against everything? You know? And what decision would anyone make in this story if you're put in this situation? So that's why I think Melisandre is more misunderstood than anything. And yeah, sure, it's sad that I know killing, like, objectively speaking, just right off the bat, killing children is wrong, but it's either kill this child or let everyone die. And you know, in the real world, of course, I'd be against killing the kid. I'd say no. I'd definitely say no. It reminds me of an episode, to like just go on like a little tangent just for a second. It reminds me of an episode of Star Trek Enterprise, right? A crew member gets knocked into a coma and he needs an organ. So they make a clone of him, essentially. And the clone is only supposed to live like 15 days. But the clone has all of his memories, and the clone's like, I want to live. And basically the captain of the ship, Captain Archer, says to the clone, no, I'm going to force you to die because we need him alive. So they force this clone to die, basically. And I always thought it was wrong. It doesn't make sense, even if they are on a mission to save the entire planet. I think the individual rights of that person should outweigh that always. Like, you can't step all over someone's individual rights. So although Melisandre is doing what she thinks is the greater good, it's not her place to make that decision. You know, if someone willingly sacrificed themselves, that's a different story, but it should never be someone else's place to make that decision, in my personal opinion. I don't think there's any price. I don't think there's anything that's worth that. But Melisandre seems to. She has no problem with sacrifice. Yeah. But yeah, if we were talking about the ruby too, we gotta wonder, where does that ruby come from, and where does its power come from? Do all the red priestesses have the ruby? In the show, obviously, we get Kinvara, but we haven't in the book yet. We haven't seen another red priest with a ruby such as the one Melisandre is wearing. And you have to wonder, do the other Red Priests even know about this ruby? Do they know? Well, I mean, I guess I don't see. That's the thing. We don't know exactly how interconnected the workings inside the Red Temple are. We don't know exactly how the hierarchy actually runs or the way it works. We don't even know what position Melisandre is in the rankings, or if she's kind of just like doing her own thing, maybe. In the show, because there's a lot of divergences in the show. In the show, she meets up with Thoros of Myr, and she says to him that the Red Temple, they told you to convert Robert Baratheon, and that's also something that Thoros says in the book as well, that he was sent by the Red Temple to convert Robert Baratheon. Melisandre, it's less clear what her initial goal was. Like I said, it seems to me that she would have had to been told by someone else that Stannis is the one, because the fact that she's so sure that it's him is striking to me, given the lack of evidence. Given the lack of evidence for it. Let's see. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat now. I haven't looked in a while. Oh, and I just wanted to say, just 1 second. I just wanted to say thank you so much to Vincent Harper. You gave me a super chat earlier when I was reading, and I couldn't respond to it just then. Vincent Harper said, "Yo, thanks for all the great content, and I'm sure others are proud of you, brother. Don't quit, and great things will come in time." Well, thank you so much for those kind words, Vincent. I'm so glad you've been enjoying the podcast so far. And if anyone else has been enjoying it, feel free to leave a like, because those really help out. And of course, if you missed the beginning of this, it will be posted on the channel later on. All right. Lewis Theron says, "The Lord of Light shows Im what she needs to see, not the truth." Ah, that's a very interesting point. Like I get what you mean. Like, he's showing her what he's showing her because he knows that she's going to react the way she does, but it's all ultimately as part of the plan. This is what you need to see to do this. Like, your role in this might not but be what you expect, because the Lord of Light works in more mysterious ways than you could ever even possibly imagine. Tien says, "It's crazy she has a false sword for him, but still thinks he's the one. How?" Interesting point. Maybe, see, that's the thing. Melisandre is all about illusion. I think she feels that even the illusion that he is the one is better than nothing. She's saying that I know he's the one, but on top of that, I gotta keep up the illusion for other people. See, that the false sword is for everyone else. It's just part of the illusion. It's just part of the image. David Hunter says, "In the flames, in this chapter, she sees a girl gray as stone who turns to ash. She sees Jon Snow going from man to wolf to man. Shireen's death, Jon Snow's revival, foreshadowing." I definitely think that she is seeing Jon Snow's revival. Because we know, I personally think, and I've said this before, that Jon Snow, at the end of A Dance with Dragons, is inside of Ghost. That's very obvious to me. He's inside of Ghost. And so that is the first step. Man to wolf. And in the next book, we'll see him go from a wolf to a man again. Now, whether or not that'll be back into the Jon Snow body or into another person's body remains to be seen. Because I personally think that Jon Snow's body might be finished, and that she'll have to kill Ghost and put Jon Snow's soul essentially inside of someone else's body. A sacrifice. Okay. Ideas of Ice and Fire says, "Gramy. The red in Mance Rayder's cloak is from a red priest, or do you think Mance and Mel have a history?" The story is that a girl sewed the red into the cloak, isn't it? I think the story might be just, I think it might be just a simple story, and that it's just the patch of red, and that he just loved it so much that he just hated the black, and he said that I'm never going to wear something that's completely black again. Because I think it kind of represents his free spirit, does it not? The color red. Jonathan Kine says, Q&A, she sees Stannis as the one because that vision leads her to Jon through Stannis. So she had to be wrong about Stannis to be right about Jon. This logic means she is never really wrong. Thoughts? Well, I think it goes back to what I just said, that the Lord of Light shows her what she needs to see so that she acts in the way that he wants. It's like in Patrick Rothfuss's series, there's a being known as the Cathay, and it knows the future, it knows everything. So it will always say what it needs to say to you to get the exact reaction that it knows you will give it. If that makes any sense. Okay. Is the dragon that Bran sees at Winterfell the dragon that Melisandre sees at Hardhome? We don't exactly know if that part is at Hardhome or somewhere else. But I definitely think it could be. It definitely could be that dragon. Because you're referring to the end of A Clash of Kings when Summer sees the winged snake and its breath was a river of flame. So yeah, I think it could be. It also could be. It could be a number of things. It could be. She could be seeing an event that has nothing to do with Hardhome and takes place even further in the future, involving one of Daenerys' dragons, or the dragon that Euron takes from Daenerys, which I think he will. Okay. San Rickson says, Jon Snow's soul being put into a different body could remove the incest between him and Dany, assuming that happens book-wise. Parentheses, it will. I guess, but I don't think that's really a concern of it, because the Targaryens have bred brother and sister for forever, basically. And so it really doesn't matter if they are related anyways. In fact, it's probably better if they're related, because it keeps the bloodlines pure, supposedly. And of course, this isn't something that could work in the real world. When you have brothers and sisters sleeping together in the real world, it leads to all sorts of horrible genetic defects, and your kids are not going to be healthy. And so, of course, this is a fantasy element of it all. The whole issue is why the red silk is on the west of Westeros and how it got there. That's a good question. It could have gotten. I mean, a lot of places. We can maybe. I don't know. I think it's kind of a big leap to assume that it's from a red priest or from the priesthood or from Melisandre. I don't think there's really any connection. And Mance Rayder could just be lying about the story too. He could have gotten the silk on one of his trips to the south. So we don't know. We really don't know. And see, that's the thing. We can't always assume that everyone in our story is telling the truth all the time. Even if it seems like something that could be the truth. You know, some things are red herrings, and maybe this red cloth is literally a red herring. Not literally a red herring, literally a red crock, literally a red cloth. CRR Warren says, Q&A random, but why did they bring up Mel's old age in the show, only to never speak of it again, especially after she took off the ruby in the tub? Love your channel, by the way. I think the ruby in the tub bit was just a mistake on their part, because that's in like season 4, I think. And why have they never mentioned it again? I don't know. I don't know. I think they cut a lot of stuff for time in that show. And I think that if they're going to mention it again, they'll do it at the end of season 8. And we don't get it if we don't get it in season 8, it'll be weird. I think that Melisandre needs a revelation to the world. Reveal yourself, Melisandre. Crimbo says, you always talk about Euron taking a dragon, but it's Victarion on his way to the dragons. Please explain why Euron and not Victarion. Because I think that the dragon horn, it doesn't matter who blows the horn. It matters who is the master of the horn. And I think that the horn is claimed with blood, as Makuro says. Euron has already claimed the horn with blood. So it doesn't matter who blows the horn, where it's blown. The beast will belong to Euron. That's the way I believe the magic works. I don't think that Euron is just doing this, trusting Victarion all of a sudden. I think Euron is very much in control of the situation. He knows what's happening. He has help from something else, a more powerful being that sees things at a wider scope than he does, I think. But yeah, I don't think Euron has had the wool pulled over his eyes by Victarion in the slightest bit. I think he predicted that Victarion would betray him and do what he did and try to claim Daenerys for himself. I think he knew all of this. So Okay. Chris South 2354 says, I believe in the books it says that the red silk came from a wreckage. Actually, I don't remember where the red silk came from. I think, when do we hear this story? I'm pretty sure this is a story that Mance Rayder might have told to Jon Snow. Or maybe maybe I'm remembering incorrectly. Okay. Ideas of Ice and Fire says Cameron Charles. Do you think the same magic that's sustaining Bloodraven to live this long is the same magic that Melisandre is using to glamour herself? No. Bloodraven is being sustained by the tree, the werewood tree net. Like, that is his life's blood. That is where he is getting his power from. That is what's keeping him alive. Melisandre is being sustained by fire. It's the ruby, it is the touch of the red god, it's the kiss of the flame, it's the agony, it's the ecstasy that's filling her. Like, it's a different kind of magic entirely. At least in my opinion. Like, to me, Bloodraven kind of has like a symbiotic relationship with the werewood trees, right? I imagine that his blood is flowing into the tree and that the tree is flowing into him. And that it's kind of like that. Because, like, yeah, it's a blood tree. That's the tree is what is extending his life to an unnatural extent. Yeah. I think it's the werewood keeping him alive. And Melisandre, the ruby is glamoring her, no doubt. But perhaps it's some other spell or incantation, some other way that she is staying young. The waif in the books is not necessarily staying young. She keeps the appearance of youth by drinking the weird potion, whatever it is. She keeps the appearance of youth, but she's still maybe aging. I'm not sure. Why is Melisandre more powerful at the wall? Is it because the spells in it or something else? It could be just the magic of the wall itself. Maybe it's kind of a nexus of power, because it is a great magical artifact, isn't it? It's strong enough that cold hands can't cross it, right? So it does have some power. So maybe the wall is just a nexus of pure energy. She doesn't seem to question why she's stronger at the wall, why she is stronger closer to the enemy. And see, that's the thing. We don't know where R'hllor lives, but there are some hints that he could live at Stygii. There are hints that he could live at Stygii, which is in the Heart of Darkness and Ashai, but we don't know for sure. So yeah, she doesn't seem to question why she's stronger closer to the enemy, which is a little weird if you ask me. But yeah, the only reason that I could think is just it's the wall itself, and that the wall is kind of just a nexus of power that she can tap into somehow. Thanks for an epic final in the werewood. Think for an epic final in the werewood will gain sentience and grow feet and wage war upon Westeros like the Ents from Lord of the Rings. I don't see that happening. I think if anything, the Children of the Forest speak for the werewoods. The Children of the Forest speak for the trees and nature in the werewoods, and that's why I don't think they're on the side of helping men. I think the Children of the Forest pretty much understand that mankind can never coexist with nature. And so I don't think they're on our side. I think we'll get that. I think by the end of it, we'll see that there's still, like, if anything, ice preserves. Maybe the world will freeze, but eventually it will thaw. And then the Children of the Forest can have their time again. But by that point in time, mankind will be completely gone. Why would the Children of the Forest want man to exist? Look at what they do. They destroy everything. Okay. Christina Guerrero says, Q&A, do you think Arya's true purpose is that she might be the Great Other's champion, since she worships death and the many-faced gods? Is that her dark path? The Great Other's champion. I don't know. See, that's the thing. Like, there's so many twists and turns in this series. We don't know what connects and what doesn't. The Great Other in Melisandre's religion, in her dualistic religion, is the god of death. He is. And the faceless men do say that they worship the many-faced god, the god of death. But to what extent does that connect? So would the stranger from the Seven also be the same god of death that Melisandre worships? Maybe I don't think Arya's purpose is to that. I don't think that's Arya's purpose. I don't think that she's a servant of the Great Other necessarily. I could be wrong. But I don't think so. I think if anyone is a servant of the Great Other, it's Bran unknowingly, right? Because I think that the children have made a pact with this being, right? And Bran is unknowingly serving them by just going through this training and doing what they want him to do. Q&A. Do you think Jon Snow will kill Daenerys and bring about Lightbringer? So that would be a callback to the Nissa Nissa prophecy. And that seems almost too obvious, but I could still see it happening. So maybe would be my answer to that. What people or groups are aiding the forces of winter, in your opinion? Well, the Children of the Forest, for one. And that includes Bloodraven, I think. If you go back to my Understanding the Birth of Dragons video, I point to Bloodraven as the icy breath that Daenerys feels in the back of her neck when she's dreaming in a Game of Thrones. She feels an icy breath in the back of her neck. And as this is also the voice that's calling to her, don't wake the dragon. You don't want to wake the dragon. This is that voice that's discouraging her from waking the dragon. He doesn't want this new fire power to be born into the world because he is on the side of cold, at least for the moment. You know, I think that the Children of the Forest, if anything, the Children of the Forest are patient. I think they would give ice its chance, its time, if that meant that they could eliminate fire, if that meant that they could eliminate people, who are definitely the fire side of this. Like the Ghost of Highheart says, that the trees remember when the first men came here with fire in their blah, blah, blah. She remembers when the first men came here with fire in their fist. So men are associated with fire. She says that the trees do not love the flames. All right. And you know who else doesn't love the flames? The others. just trying to point that out, you know. Just pointing it out. So yeah, men are associated with fire. I think that the children are at least momentarily on the side of ice. And yeah, they'll do anything to kind of dim the spread of fire. Melisandre sees Stannis fighting the others. So does that confirm that Stannis will defeat the Boltons? I think that Stannis does defeat the Boltons in the book, yeah. Because the Battle of the Bastards in the show is totally not a thing. Stannis will defeat the Boltons. He'll win the Battle of Ice, the Battle of Winter. And then later on, he could still sacrifice Shireen, and I think that'll still happen. But yeah, he'll at least beat the Boltons. Like, they'll be defeated by Stannis. The Battle of the Bastards was fan fiction, essentially. Alright. Okay. Do you think Davos sends a cold draft through Melisandre's hot heart? I don't know, maybe. I think it's interesting that Melisandre, when talking about glamours, she specifically mentions a bag of finger bones. Now, think. Who had a bag of finger bones? Davos, around his neck. But they were lost. They were lost in the Battle of Blackwater. Why did Melisandre say this? Why did she mention a bag of finger bones specifically? That seems almost too specific. So does she have someone walking around glamored as Davos somewhere? Does she? Is the Davos that we know not even really Davos? Maybe, I don't know. I think that Davos is real. But I think that could indicate that maybe there's something going on as far as another Davos being glamored. So just think of that. She in this whole chapter again is all about illusion, all about glamours. That's the whole point of it all. It's all about giving off appearances and making things appear a certain way when they're really not at all as they seem. I agree, Ashara Stark. The Battle of Ice is so much more complex than the way it is being than the way it was portrayed in the show when it's just the battle. I'm not like putting. I'm not talking crap about the show, but I'm just saying the Battle of the Bastards. It's cool for what it is. It doesn't make sense for Jon Snow to charge those guys. Rickon's death was dumb. I didn't like what they did to Osha. I wasn't a big fan of that, and it was a little fan servicey. It was, but I'm not saying it was bad. But yeah, the way the Battle of Ice is different, and it's better in the book. It's gonna be better, man. Stannis is gonna do his thing, and we're finally gonna get to see why Stannis is such a badass. Because we're always hearing about Stannis. Stannis has done good things in the book. Like you read the books, and it's kind of clear why Stannis has a lot of fans, and you get why people were upset about Stannis. See, I wasn't as upset about Stannis as some people, because I pretty much foresaw the Shireen burning thing, and like I said, I think that is something that will happen in the book. That Shireen will be burned because it's just she's got King's blood, she's got Stannis's blood in her veins. It's leading there. It's been leading there. Yeah. Melisandre though, she's an interesting character. Red eyes, red hair, fire. The fact that she's warm, is cool to me. It's like she's almost radiating energy, radiating magic. She definitely has a presence. An interesting thing that Melisandre says that I always gravitate to and like to think about is the fact that shadows are creatures of the light. So maybe that's why she took to shadow binding so easily, because she uses the power that is gifted to her by R'hllor to bend shadows as well. Shadows are creatures of the light. They bend to the will of the light. So maybe she herself wouldn't have even had to study as long as a normal shadow binder because of the other skills that she already had that involved manipulating light the way she does. And she also talks about glamours in similar language. Dancing shadows, dancing light, twisting shadows. It's all about manipulating light and looks. Q&A. You think Mance might be drawing the Bolton forces out of Winterfell for Stannis by stirring up shit? I'm not sure what Mance Rayder is doing. I think Mance Rayder has his own thing going on. And yeah, I don't know if it goes that far into it. David Hunter says Stannis is a straight badass. What other land lubber could take out the Iron Fleet? You're definitely right. I definitely feel like Stannis was done a disservice in the show. They didn't do him right. No, his death was unbefitting. And it's the kind of death too that leaves people with hope because we don't see him die, and so people think, oh, maybe he's still alive, but no. Q&A. Quaithe tells Dany to remember the Undying. I think the Undying are the slaves she freed, or what do you think is the Undying? The Undying are the Undying ones. The Undying ones from the House of the Undying. When she's saying remember the Undyings, when she's saying remember the Undying, she's saying remember what the Undying once told you about you being betrayed 3 times, about all these prophecies and the 3 fires that you must light. Remember what they told you because they spoke truth. I think that's what she means by remember the Undying. I don't think Stannis, the Stargazer says, I don't think Stannis will agree with burning Shireen in the book. Melisandre will do it behind his back. That is also a possibility. Like I said, Melisandre believes that what she's doing is for the greater good. But does that necessarily make it true? I could maybe see Melisandre doing that if she feels that the situation is desperate. And then, of course, Stannis would probably have her killed for this. I think so. I think if she killed Shireen without Stannis's, go ahead, she's dead. She's definitely dead unless she glamours again and turns into someone else. But yeah, I think something like that. I think depending on the result, it could have a similar effect as to what happened in the show. Her faith gets destroyed for a while, and then it comes back a little bit. Glamoring could be defined as a form of shadow binding. I agree, Jonathan Kine. I mean, it's the same thing. She's talking about twisting shadows. So if that's not shadow binding, then I don't know what is. It seems very similar to me. Vanessa Amnesty says, Shireen would probably be burned for her grayscale. If the sickness starts to spread, Stannis may agree on burning her to save the realm from it. Well, that's an interesting thing because if we remember Val, she says that the free folk know that this disease can never go away. She knows that eventually Shireen, it'll flare back up. So if it does flare back up and Stannis sees that Shireen could have the potential to spread it everywhere, and that Melisandre also sees a purpose on top of this, that the sacrifice could gain them something, then I think it could be the combination of those two things that could lead Stannis to say, hey, yeah, well, let's burn Shireen now. I think that makes a lot of sense. Q&A. What did Mill mean by stone dragon that she wanted to wake by burning Edric's storm? They didn't have dragon eggs. Well, it's part of the prophecy. When Azor Ahai will be born amidst salt and smoke to wake dragons from stone. And there are a lot of different, and I don't know how Melisandre is exactly interpreting this, but I think it can be interpreted a lot of different ways. The very obvious interpretation would be Daenerys, obviously, born again amidst smoke, waking dragons literally out of stone, the stone dragon eggs. We could also interpret it maybe as Jon Snow coming out of Winterfell, stone dragon. I'm not sure how Melisandre interpreted it. Maybe it was just the rising of Azor Ahai. I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure. But I do know that is just part of the prophecy. It's from deep within the annals of Ashai, where that prophecy comes from. And it all depends on our interpretation. I don't know if she literally thought a dragon would be awoken from the stone. But yeah, it's up for interpretation. It still is. It's all up in the air. Okay. Roderick Davis says, could she be a Shadowbinder pretending to serve the Lord of Light? There's always things about her that seem false. See, that's the thing. That's why I read this entire chapter, too. Because it's the first time that we're actually inside of her mind. And to me, it strikes me as that she definitely serves the Lord of Light. She definitely believes in R'hllor. She believes that what he says is the truth. She believes that she should serve him and that all men should serve him. So I think she definitely believes in R'hllor. She's not a pretender. How will Jon react to Mill bringing him back by killing Shireen? Assuming that is what happens, and I don't know if that is what happens, if that's what's going to happen or not. I think that Jon Snow, he definitely would not like it. I think that I don't know if he'd straight up be like, I gotta get rid of Melisandre because she did save his life, basically. So I think he'd obviously feel horrible that Shireen had to die, but then again, he'd be resigned to his fate because he'd have to stand up and face his destiny, because the Lord of Light would not have brought him back if this was not his purpose. And then you have to think, too, why would Melisandre need Shireen to bring back Jon Snow? You have Beric Dondarrion, who apparently was needed by the Lord of Light. He didn't need a sacrifice to return. But then we got also Lady Stoneheart, who did seem to require a sacrifice to return. So we don't know. Maybe for someone like Jon Snow, who is a special person, I guess, it would require Shireen, King's blood. So maybe. Q&A, were Dany's eggs petrified, or is it that's just what dragon eggs are like? We'll see. Illyrio says, we can only really go by what Illyrio says, because he says, here are dragon eggs turned to stone by the ages. The ages have turned them to stone. We don't know. They seem like stone at first, and then as Daenerys keeps them for longer and longer, she can feel the dragon stirring inside of them. So it seems like over time they become less and less stone. So maybe they go into a kind of stasis. Maybe dragon eggs can just go into a stasis for hundreds of years, like a tardigrade or something. And then when they sense that they can be hatched, they start to come back to life. Maybe it's something like that. Q&A. Question for everyone in the chat. If Ellen Page were to replace Ellen on The Ellen Show, would you start watching? Well, that's a random question. The answer is no. Jonathan Kind says, John couldn't condone the sacrifice of children. Too much Ned in him for that. I agree. He'd feel horrible about it, but what could he do? Really? I mean, his honor might compel him to send Melisandre away, right? Like he does in this show. But I don't know if he could sentence Melisandre to death, considering the fact that she brought him back to life. And see, that's the thing. I feel like Melisandre is needed. Her visions, even if she interprets them wrong at times, her visions are needed. Her visions are powerful. She herself is very powerful. I mean, she summoned a shadow that killed Renly Baratheon and killed other people too. And see, that's the thing. Like that magic. Why couldn't that be useful against the other? A shadow. Maybe she could send a shadow into the White Walker camp and stab the White Walkers with dragon glass or something. I don't know. We don't know the extent by which Melisandre's power works. And that's another thing about Melisandre's power. Like how much of it is illusion and how much of it is real magic. Now, a shadow plunging a sword through someone, I mean, how much realer can it get? I love that you, LML says, I love that you just compared dragons to tardigrades. Well, I've been watching a lot of Star Trek Discovery, so, you know how that goes. Cameron Charles, what's so different about Casterly Rock that after the Field of Fire, Queen Visenya said that Dragonfire would destroy the castle, and we're glad they caught Lauren Lannister? I don't get what you mean. Of course Dragonfire would destroy Casterly Rock. Oh, won't destroy the castle. I don't know. Maybe because it's just carved out of a solid block of stone. Maybe if you went deep enough into the castle and you took everyone deep enough into like the tunnels and the caverns deep down, they could survive Dragonfire. Harrenhal burned because it's not just stone. It's like there's like hay and like a bunch of others. There's wood. There's a lot of stuff there that could catch fire. But Casterly Rock, if you retreated down into the depths of Casterly Rock, you might be saved from the dragon. You might actually survive if you hold out for long enough. Maybe. So maybe that's it. Handit Typer says, a shadow didn't kill Renly. He was killed by an invisible entity that casted a shadow. The shadow was on the wall. The way I interpret it is that Melisandre, that Stannis sleeps, and in his dream, he's doing this. So, because Stannis remembers killing Renly. So Melisandre is, by using this magic, she is taking Stannis' literal shadow, and it's being casted on the wall. So maybe it's the shadow of Stannis is what we're seeing. Stannis is the one that's doing it. On the wall, we're seeing the shadow of Stannis. So that's why when Brienne sees it, she says that it was a shadow in the shape of Stannis. It's Stannis' shadow, and he's dreaming. So maybe it's his non-corporeal form. It's his ethereal form that's being sent out into the night and doing this and casting a shadow. That's what it seems like to me. Okay. If we talk about Melisandre, I guess we got to talk about Moqorro too. Moqorro is a red priest like Melisandre. He sees things in the flames. He can do magic. He saves Victarion's arm with some kind of sorcery. Very painful sorcery, very painful magic. He saves himself. And that's another thing. He sees harm against himself in the flames too. He's able to survive a shipwreck, and he's able to not get taken by slaves like Tyrion is. Get taken as a slave like Tyrion is, because because of the power that R'hllor has given him. And he's another person that seems definitely a 100% servant of the Red God. He looks in the flames and he does what the flames say. And some might say, myself included, that he is better at interpreting visions than Melisandre is, because we see him with Victarion and everything that he says is coming true. Melisandre tends to interpret things wrong. Like in this very chapter, we see that she thinks that the girl on the horse is actually Arya, when in reality it's someone else, and she is just thinking that it's Arya. Instead of just telling Jon Snow that I see a girl, she's giving an identity to this girl, because Melisandre has never seen Arya. She has no idea what Arya looks like. So instead of saying that I don't know, but I'm seeing a girl, she's saying that it's Arya because she's hoping to gain Jon Snow's trust. And then, of course, there's on top of that, she's literally being shown Jon Snow. She's asking, where is Azor Ahai? Where is Azor Ahai? And she's being shown Jon Snow, and she's interpreting this completely wrong. But then again, we don't know everything that Moqorro sees. Maybe if we got a point of view chapter of what Moqorro was thinking and seeing, he would seem just as uncertain as Melisandre. All right, because we can only assume that from the outward appearance to everyone else, Melisandre, even in this chapter, seems just her normal self. Like this whole internal monologue is going on with her, inside of her own mind, so no one else sees this. They just still see the mysterious, powerful, potent Melisandre that we're used to seeing. Kevin Rose says, Q&A. How will D&D explain Mel's powers? All they know is that the actress looks good naked, and we'd need more of that on screen. I don't know. It seems to a certain extent that they've already begun to explain them through the Ruby and stuff like that. But I don't think they're gonna go into the deeper bits of the illusion, and they haven't. A little bit we see in season 4, I believe. Melisandre is showing Selyse some of the potions and powders, and she's saying, these are some of my potions and powders. So they do include that. But I think that for the most part in the show, it's just going to be, it's magic, and it's not going to get a deeper explanation than that. And I don't think they really need to in the show. I really don't think they need to. If Dany's dragon eggs, this is a Q&A from Anku Blackworm. If Dany's dragon eggs were so old they turned to stone, is it possible that they are relics from the great empire of the Dawn? See, again, I don't know. I mean, I don't feel like they have to be that old necessarily to turn to stone. But I think that it's probably part of the natural way the dragon eggs are. I think that over time, if they are unable to hatch, they go into kind of they go into kind of a coma, basically. A kind of they go into a state where they shut down and they harden, and when they sense that they can be awakened again, they kind of spring back to life and they start stirring again. That's the way I personally think that it works. Maybe Moqorro is having better visions due to his location being closer to the shadows, and Melisandre is closer to the heart of winter. Okay, so maybe Moqorro's interesting, but then Melisandre is more powerful at the wall. So shouldn't her visions be more powerful? Unless her spells and visions come from two separate sources of power, which is interesting. Q&A. Can Shadowbinders do more than shadowbinding during the day when there is more light, thus more shadows to bind? That's an interesting thing. I'm honestly not sure. Melisandre in the book only sent shadows out at night, I believe. But I don't know if it can work. She does say that shadows are creatures of the light, so it seemed like it could work that way. But then again, it's more creepy and dramatic when it happens at night, I guess. But I mean, I don't know if, judging by the way Melisandre describes it, it seems like that should be definitely possible. It seems like maybe even the shadows should be more powerful, because the night is the Great Other's dominion, and the day is the Lord of Light's dominion. So it seems like shadows should be more powerful in the day, right? How do lizard lions survive in the winter? I am not sure. I guess maybe they go deep in the water and like burrow. I have no idea. I have no idea. Maybe I don't know. I have no idea. And lizard lions are like crocodiles or um or alligators or something like that. I don't know. I had no idea because where do we see them? I think we see them on the King's Road, right? In a Sansa or Arya chapter in the very first book, we see them. Okay. Tin says, how likely is it that in the show Mill will give Jamie a new hand, kind of like how McCurl does with Victorian? I don't think that's happening, but I think that's a cool idea. I mean, where is Melisandre now? She says in the show she's in Volantis, so she's like, I'm going to Volantis because that's where the biggest Red Priest temple is. So she's going to Volantis to uncover some things, and then she will return to sacrifice herself. So that is my prediction, man. 2019, when season 8 airs and Melisandre comes back to Westeros and sacrifices herself, you're gonna say, Ideas of Ice and Fire said this because I did, because that's what she's doing. I'm doomed to die in this strange country. Those were her words in the show. What about Dorne in the winter, snow in the desert? I imagine that Dorne remains quite hot. Well, maybe not hot, but I don't think it gets snowy like the rest of Westeros does in the winter. Maybe this winter, this will be a special winter, so maybe Dorne will kind of mess up too. We have to wonder about the whole world. Does it get cold everywhere? Does it freeze over everywhere? Do you think Shadowbinder magic is how the others were created? I think the others were created through ice magic from way north. They were created by I've said how I think I've said my origin myth for them multiple times, that the children of the forest beseeched some entity in the north that was a god of ice and cold, the same entity that the wildlings still worship there, and that they helped the children create the others, essentially. And that's how I believe they were created. I think shadow binding magic is different. It comes from a different part of the world. It taps into a different magical source, I think. Kyle says, will Ariane get with Fagon? I think that's a reasonable match, to be honest. Because Daenerys has rejected Quentyn, and Quentyn has become fried Quentyn. So I think that Ariane and Fagon, when Fagon announces himself in Westeros, that seems like a reasonable match. That seems like totally where Doran would go. Okay, so now the plan is back on. You will marry him, and you will be the prince. You will be the princess of Dorne, and you will also be the queen of Westeros. But then again, would Aegon accept this? Because I think that Daenerys is the better match. Daenerys is Targaryen, so that kind of even more solidifies his claim. And on top of that, Daenerys has dragons. So yeah. So I think that Fagon would have to make the decision between Daenerys and Ariane, which is the better choice. See you, Lucifer. Get you on next week, buddy. We're having technical difficulties this week. He was supposed to be on, but shit happened. So, guys, yeah. Melisandre's chapter in this book is definitely one of my favorite chapters, man. Like I said before, the theme of it is totally illusion, which I totally dig. I can totally get behind that. Melisandre is very powerful. Like, that's the one thing we can't, just because she feels uncertain about herself, we can't underestimate her power. She's one of the most powerful characters in the entire thing. This woman, someone that can kill you without even touching you or being in the same room as you, is definitely very, very powerful. And Melisandre does this with the shadows. Melisandre does this perhaps even with the leeches, with the blood. Balon Greyjoy. With the blood of the bastard, Balon Greyjoy, Joffrey Baratheon, bloody hell, who was the other one? Balon Greyjoy, Robb Stark. So yeah, like and you can take that with a grain of salt. How much of that was Melisandre's power and how much of that was just, this is war and this is what happens in war. But yeah, maybe Melisandre sending this energy out with these leeches did something to affect the way events happened. But see, I don't want to get too much into this, but that's my thing. That's kind of the thing with prayer. Like, we talk about a god like R'hllor, who's all-knowing and has like a will of his own and will always enact his own will. Then you have to wonder, like, then what's the point of prayer? If this god is just going to do whatever he wants no matter what, why pray? Like, your prayer couldn't possibly have an effect, could it? But then again, we don't really know how the rules work, and George R. Martin has already said we're not going to see any gods on screen. So that, to me, right off the bat, is suspect. That the fact that George R. Martin said we're not going to see any gods, that already makes me suspect that maybe what she is seeing a god, or maybe what she thinks is a god, is not actually a god, and is maybe something else. Maybe something else. And of course, you guys know my ideas on what I think that something else can be. Just check out my playlist of Song of Ice and Fire theories. And I also want to say, since I've been talking for about 2 hours now, that if you like this video, and if you've liked the conversation so far, feel free to give me a like. Smash the like button, please. It's super freaking helpful. Super freaking helpful. And like I said before, if you want to support this podcast, check me out at patreon.com/Ideas of Ice and Fire. Please follow me on Twitter, guys. Hit me up, Ideas of Ice and Fire. Well, Ideas of Ice _Fire on Twitter. And then facebook.com/IOIAF. Yeah. What's the deal with the black oily stone? The black oily stone is a reference to the work of Lovecraft. And I actually got a theory video on Lovecraft coming up in the next few days. And a Song of Ice and Fire theory video. So you can check that out. But yeah, it's a reference to Lovecraft. Whenever it's around, it kind of bleeds into the environment, makes people go mad, stuff like that. And it's all over the place. And most of the places where it shows up, it's associated with mystery and strange gods. And Lovecraftian names tend to pop up. Yeah. Vanessa Amnesty says, if I remember correctly, Martin said Melisandre saw the death of the three kings and used the leeches to manipulate Stannis to burn Edric. So yeah, see, that's the thing. We have to wonder how much of Melisandre's power is just, her knowing something and then just doing something to seem a certain way. So yeah, Melisandre probably just foresaw the death and just it was all a farce, basically. She foresaw it in the flames. She already knew it would happen. Will Gendry be legitimized? Probably not. Probably not. Q&A, have you accepted the drowned god as your lord and savior? No, I don't worship such beings. Sorry. Not the drowned god. Yeah. I wonder what Melisandre would think of the drowned god. She'd probably see him as a demon the same way Moqorro does. Moqorro says to the people on the ship, he says to Victarion, I believe, your drowned god is a demon. So yeah, Melisandre, it's a very sanctimonious religion, I think. They're just, every other god is a demon, and our god is the only real god, and all men must serve our god. Is basically Melisandre's whole thing. Anything else is blasphemy. And you have to wonder, yeah, why question Melisandre? Yeah, we have to, let me not get ahead of myself. Melisandre clearly works very deceptively. She is a deceiver because she firmly believes that what she says is true, and she's willing to lie and deceive and cheat so that other people believe as she does and does as she wants. Like, she's been manipulating Stannis this entire time. Although she may or may not believe that he is the one, she has been manipulating him this entire time and making him believe things that aren't necessarily true. And it's like with Jon Snow, as we saw earlier. She says, I saw this castle towers by the sea. He says Eastwatch. She has no idea whether or not it's Eastwatch or not. But she agrees. She says, yeah, Eastwatch. She has no idea whether or not what she's seeing in her vision is Eastwatch. But because she wants to impress Jon Snow, and she wants him to believe in her and trust her, she says that it's Eastwatch. That's the same reason she tells him that this girl is Arya, even though she's not sure, because she wants him to believe her. So that's kind of, she's a little embarrassed later on, I bet, when it turns out not to be Arya that shows up. Melisandre is definitely a deceiver. Definitely a deceiver, definitely a manipulator, definitely a subtle player in all of this. And I think there's more to be revealed about her and her goal and her history and her past as we move on. Obviously very young when sold off into the Red Priesthood. We don't know what becoming a priest entails. We can assume that pain, she says that R'hllor speaks to his chosen few in the language of ash and flame and cinder. So I'm almost imagining almost torture going on in those Red Priest temples, because she's definitely used to fire. I doubt if she can even. Well, I was gonna say I doubt if she can even be burned, but she does say that when she's burning Rattleshirt, and she's glamoring him to look like Mance, her own ruby at her throat is burning so hot that she fears it might blacken her own skin. But it doesn't blacken her own skin because she is fire. She is got fire living inside of her. So yeah, and the fact that Melisandre has fire living inside of her, that, it makes sense why she'd see the others, beings that are ice made flesh, literally living ice, and see them as the great opposite to her and the great enemy to her. As LML likes to say, that Melisandre seems like she is a being that's being sustained on pure fire, and maybe even one day will become a being that exists sustaining itself only on fire and will never need to eat or sleep again. Like Melisandre says, that one day maybe I'll never need to sleep or anything. She already says she doesn't need to eat, but she says maybe one day I'll never need to be able to sleep. I'll never have to sleep. Do the others sleep? The others seem like beings that are perfectly sustained by ice. They don't need to eat. They don't need to sleep. So maybe that's what Melisandre is on her way to becoming. She'd be the servant of R'hllor in the way that they are the servant of the great other. Pure fire, just like they are pure ice. But then the thing is, a dragon, though, you'd have to wonder about dragons, because a dragon doesn't seem to be a servant of anyone. I mean, we do have the Valyrians who tame dragons. That is true. But then a big part of Daenerys' storyline, I think, a theme is, a dragon is not a slave, and that's her whole thing. She's freeing slaves. She turns to Hizdar and he says, tell the bitch that the beast won't come. And she says, why should it? A dragon is not a slave. Because you can't enslave a dragon. You can't enslave that pure essence of fire. It can't be tied down or tamed. Q&A, do you think George R. Martin has had this big plan to let D&D ruin the show, unless ultimately to bring in more hype for the real story in his books? I don't think so. I just think it got out of hand, and they got ahead of themselves, and it is what it is. The show is still good for what it is, man. It's fun to watch. Like, I pre-ordered the season 7 on Blu-ray. I'm not bitter anymore. Well, maybe a little bit, but I got it on Blu-ray, and I'm fine with I'm not fine. Can't say that I'm 100% fine, but I can't whine about it forever. And, when season 8 comes out, I'm sure I'll have plenty more to bitch about and talk about how much this sucks and that sucks and make fun of it. 6 episodes, though. An hour and 30 minutes each episode, but we'll see. Yeah. We will see. So we are going to go for a little bit longer on this Melisandre chat that we're having. So Melisandre, from Asshai. Some of us think she was born in Asshai. Some of us think she was born somewhere else and was just found in Asshai by the Red Priesthood. That much may be revealed later. She definitely believes that she is from Asshai. She hasn't given us any indication that she was born somewhere else. Do you think Bloodstone Emperor is like Maekar from Lord of the Rings, who created discordance in the Song of Creation? It's interesting that you would make that comparison. Perhaps that seems like kind of a similar story, because it's said by the people of the East that it was his usurpation of his sister that led to the Long Night, and that seems like a That seems like it would be kind of a discordance in quote-unquote the Song of Creation. Maybe that was the event that threw the seasons off balance in the first place, because there's speculation in the world of Ice and Fire that maybe the seasons haven't always been off balance. It was some event that caused this to happen, and maybe it was that. Interesting. It wouldn't be the first time that George R. R. Martin has referenced Tolkien. Do you think Melisandre has some tickled bitties? Well, based on the way they're described in the book, they seem pretty nice. If I have to comment on that, I want to take a little bit of time to say, like, everyone, feel free to check out my video on Dune. Right, it's great, and I think before we end the stream, I will show you guys a clip of that, and just so you guys can see what it's all about. I know I've shown several clips, but I'll just show you a little clip. And because I do have one set aside here. But yeah, I'm going to take a few more questions before we do that. Before we get to that. Oberyn could probably whip anybody as long as he isn't keeping them alive for a confession. Yeah. See, Oberyn's biggest downfall, like, and that chapter really messed me up in the head for a while. Oberyn's biggest mistake was gloating, and the mountain took an opportunity, and the mountain did what he had to do, and Oberyn ended up with a crushed skull. And, you know, it's sad. It's sad to see Oberyn go that way. I was not happy by that chapter. It was very shocking, to say the least. All right. So, I'm going to play a little clip of that Dune video. Just a second. It's only about a minute long. And so you guys that haven't seen it can get a little taste of what it's all about. So here that is. But the sisterhood never intended for Jessica to be on Arrakis, much less undergo the spice agony while pregnant. The result was a child that could strike fear into the hearts of even the reverend mothers of the Bene Gesserit. "That child is an abomination," the old woman said. "Her mother deserves a punishment greater than any in history. Death, it cannot come too quickly for that child or the one who spawned her." The old woman pointed a finger at Alia. "Get out of my mind!" "TP?" the Emperor whispered. He snapped his attention back to Alia. "By the Great Mother, you don't understand. Majesty," the old woman said, "not telepathy. She is in my mind. She is like the ones before me, the ones who gave me their memories. She stands in my mind. She cannot be there, but she is." "What others?" the Emperor demanded. "What is this nonsense?" The old woman straightened, lowered her pointing hand. "I have said too much. But the fact remains that this child who is not a child must be destroyed. Long were we warned against such a one, and how to prevent such a birth. But one of our own has betrayed us." Alia the Abomination is basically Paul Atreides' little sister in Dune. And, you know, she's got some stuff going on. An entire theory of mine, which is called The Possession, the Abomination, is kind of, it takes elements from that storyline in Dune. And I see where George R. R. Martin was influenced with that, as far as Bran and the whole warging thing goes. You know, the fact that it is an abomination to take over someone else's body. He uses that word specifically, and I thought that was definitely kind of a callback to Dune. So yeah, that is just a little clip from that video, which is much longer, which you could definitely check out if you want to support me. And also, there's a giveaway that's happening. In case you guys don't know, I'm giving away a copy of God, Emperor of Dune. And all you have to do is comment on that Dune video. Just leave a comment on that video, which is called The Ultimate Guide to Dune. Just leave any comment, and yeah, maybe watch the video too if you want. But then yeah, you could win a copy of God, Emperor of Dune, and it's completely random. And for my Patreons, I'm also giving away a copy of David Lynch's Dune, the movie, on Blu-ray. So yeah, and that video that you need to comment on to win the copy of God, Emperor of Dune is Ultimate Guide to Dune, the introduction, part 1. But yeah, Melisandre, man. It's been fun talking about this crazy lady, man. I'm sure LML had some interesting things to say about her. We might cover a little bit more next week because there's so much to say about what's going on with her and her prophecies and her predictions. She just wants a glimpse of Stannis, man, in this chapter. She just wants to see him, but he's only showing her snow. She's determined that Stannis is the one, the savior of all humanity. She's seen this battle, and she knows that it's the only battle that matters. And the thing is that, first off, she gets in by telling Stannis that he's going to win the war of the Five Kings. That's what she's telling him. She's saying that you will be king, Stannis. I've seen it. You will be king. But then, like, Stannis never intended to fight the others until Melisandre. He never intended to go north until Melisandre. Melisandre said, oh, this is where you have to go now. He wouldn't have done it without her. So, yeah, like, I mean, eventually Stannis is going to be like, I'm getting strung along for the ride here. But, yeah, I think at this point, though, Stannis knows that, like, he has sacrificed a lot to get to where he is right now. He has sacrificed a lot because of what Melisandre says. And if she doesn't pull through, if she doesn't fulfill if she doesn't fulfill what she's promised, I don't know, man. I don't know how Stannis will react if he even makes it out of this alive. After all, we saw what the show did to our Stannis. But yeah, guys, I think it's about time to end this stream. We had a reading in the beginning, which went on for quite a while, though. I didn't think the reading would go on that long. Took me about 40 minutes to read that chapter. And no, it wasn't just filler, as someone said. It wasn't filler. I was reading a chapter from the book. It's the only chapter that Melisandre is in this entire book, and it gives brilliant context, I think. It gives a lot of context to what she's actually thinking and what's going on with her internally. And I just think it's a really fantastic chapter to read, and it's really interesting to see the way she thinks and the way stuff is really working in her mind. And, of course, that Mance Raider glamour part blew my mind the first time reading it. It's absolutely an amazing reveal. Just another glimpse into the power of this woman, right? Not many other people in this story have this level of magical ability. But, yeah, Melisandre is always an interesting character to talk about. Woman with a lot of secrets. We never know when we can actually trust what she's saying and when she's just saying what she thinks we want to hear. And we also can't even trust if what we're hearing is what she's really saying, apparently, because of that trick that she pulls with Mance Raider and Jon Snow, where she says something and they both hear a different word. Like, Jesus Christ, we can't even trust what this woman is saying. And I think that all goes back to her training. I think she's just so well trained that a lot of it just seems like magic. And that's like the Bene Gesserit from Dune. So well trained that it seems like magic. You know, I'm comparing sci-fi and fantasy here, but, you know, it's kind of the same concept. Witches have to learn too. Witches have to train and learn too. Look at Harry Potter. Look at witches have to study. and that's exactly what Melisandre is. She's a witch. She's a red witch. And yeah, thanks everyone for staying with me for these couple of hours. And peace out. I will be on Gray Area's channel at 10 tonight. I'm not sure if it's live or not, but I will let you guys know on Twitter what's going to be going on. I'll be on there with LML, Gray Area, and maybe someone else. So thank you guys for watching, and check me out over there tonight. If it's live, I'm not even sure 100%, but I'll let you guys know on Twitter. And peace out. Make sure you like this video if you've been watching this entire time and enjoying it. So, bye guys.